listeners, to Cosmic Confluence, the podcast where we explore the deeper currents of life, purpose, transformation, and the wisdom that shapes us. I'm your host, Sana, and today's conversation is one that speaks to the very core of who we are. What does it truly mean to live with integrity? Now, integrity isn't just about honesty or keeping promises, listeners. It's about alignment. Alignment between our values, our actions, and the way we show up in the world. And yet, living with integrity is often one of the hardest things to do, especially when life challenges us to make difficult choices. And my guest today knows this journey firsthand. He has walked through imposter syndrome, rebuilt his life after divorce and bankruptcy, and restored his identity after nearly losing his second marriage. And now, as a mentor and guide, he helps men step into their highest vision, leading with passion, purpose, and power. His work is about more than just personal success. It's about creating a ripple effect of transformation for families, communities, and of course, the world at large. So, listeners, join us as we dive into the real, unfiltered truth about integrity, what it looks like, how we cultivate it, and why it is so essential for living a fulfilled life. So, with that, listeners, please welcome Alain Dumonceaux. So, Alan, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Sana, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Of course. So, Alan, before we talk about integrity, I think our listeners would love to know about your journey from you. Although I barely scratched the surface in the intro, but I think our listeners would love to know that from you. So, please.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. So, really, my journey starts from way back when I was a child and teenager. And I used to come home in the afternoon and watch this. There's a television show in North America called The Galloping Gourmet. And this gentleman's name was Graham Kerr. And he would make all these classic French dishes, and I just loved how the dishes could come together, and then he'd have a guest, and they enjoy that meal, and that led me to wanting to become a chef. And so one of the things that I did earlier on in my career was work really hard at becoming a chef and mastering that craft. And I was really fortunate enough in the early '90s to compete at the World Culinary Olympics. And so yes, there is an Olympics for cooks. And you have to remember in the early '90s, there was no food TV, there was no Iron Chef, Bobby Flay, anything the stuff that we see today. So this was very much something that was under the radar, yet the talent worldwide, it was really incredible. And so while I focused immensely on really developing my career, and I would say I was living in high integrity from a professional perspective, my personal life was falling apart around me. And because I had dedicated so much time and energy to that, I really discounted my family life. I had a very, very young family. It just had a newborn in early in '92 when I went to compete. 3 years later, we had our second one, but all of the pressure of us trying to, raise a family, buying a home, and then staying on the career path ultimately became too much for the relationship. And it really started me on the journey to understanding why it is or how is it that somebody can be so successful in one aspect of their life, yet struggle in other parts of their lives. And I think really that journey is not just for men, but for all of us to understand how it is that we can live with integrity in all aspects of life. And so that really was this catalyst that started me moving forward. And fast forward 20 years later, and I found myself in a similar position of almost losing my second marriage for again, not really while I did the training and took classes and have some certificates. What I didn't really do was embody and live it. And so you can take as much training and courses as you want, but if you're truly not going to walk the talk, then it's not worth the time or the energy to put into it. And so I realized quickly that I was very blessed to have a woman in my life who could see the man inside of me that I needed to discover. And she helped me find that individual. And so it leads me up to today where today I help men really look at rebuilding their lives from the ground up depending on what aspect of their life has fallen apart for them.
Wow, wow, that's quite a journey, Alan, and thank you for sharing that. I believe, of course, respect to all the professions out there, but um, uh, in food industry itself is so um, it's really a high stress industry, and I mean, it's I think it's totally relatable. I think our listeners will connect with your story because yes, sometimes the one part of your life is sorted out, you are successful, you are at the high point of your career, but the other end of your life is completely uh shackles. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your journey with all of us, Alan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, now talking about integrity. um uh, um so as you mentioned your journey, at what point exactly you realized that living with integrity wasn't just a choice, but a necessity for you?
That's a great question, son. I think for me, the it finally came to be when I looked in the mirror and recognized that the person that was sitting and staring back at me, looking at me, was not the one that I had said that I was being. And so when I found myself falling, my actions were falling away from what I said I valued, the things that were important to me. And when I really looked at myself from a day to day, week to week basis, I recognized very quickly that I'm truly not living the way I say that I'm living. And so that was a hard point to hear. And again, that was part of that work was, through with my, especially through my marriage, but also with other relationships that I had. Have a very strenuous relationship with my eldest son, and part of that has to do with, being absent as when he was a young boy. I was going through my challenges and rebuilding my life. And so I recognize in that moment that the opportunity for me to truly live with integrity means I need to understand what do I value and believe in 6 different key pillars. So we use, what I call an integrity challenge. It's a free challenge people can take on my website, and it focuses on 6 different pillars: financials, emotional, physical, spiritual, professional, and in relationships. And in this assessment, we get the opportunity to find out where it is that we're living in alignment with our values and our beliefs and where we're outside of it. And that was really the catalyst that started me on this work and recognizing, boy, there's lots of places, especially when I look at from an emotional perspective, just how clued in I was with my emotions. Am I suppressing it more often than not? And if I am, what is causing that? And so that drove me into looking at different things like shadow work and truly understanding the aspects of ourselves that we don't care to deal with. And I think when we start to recognize where it is that we are out of alignment in our lives, we can start to make a conscious choice to live differently. It's not an it's an easy choice. It's a simple choice. It's not always easy to execute.
Hmm. Right, right. I agree with you. And even before I think we proceed with the discussion, I think let's just understand what exactly living with integrity means, because as I mentioned in the intro, that, people think that it's more about honesty and, go
Mm.
by the ethics or your principles. But what exactly do you mean by living with integrity?
Yeah, again, great question, and then you're absolutely right. It's more than living with honesty because sometimes being honest may not be the most integral thing that you can do in this moment. And what I mean by that is that you need to be careful about what it is the ultimate goal that we're trying to accomplish. And so there are moments when, for example, if something is happening in my wife and I are out for dinner, for example, and maybe a conversation isn't going well. For one of the things that's really important for me to be truly be in integrity is to not berate or to say something that is demeaning to my wife in public. And so while it might be an honest thing for me to say in that moment, is that the best moment? And so integrity is really about being able to assess
Mm,
when we have conversations and when you're taking action, Is it at the right time? Is it with the right individual? And is it with the right amount of emotion? And because those are key aspects to it. It's if it's easy to fall into the belief being of living in integrity, saying, well, that I always speak the truth.
Yeah.
Speaking the truth can be very harmful if it's not done with some consciousness wrapped around it. And so for us, the work that I teach, work with men, is being able to understand the aspects, what that means. It's not just about living integrity in one aspect of life. It's about in all aspects. In my character, what is it that how is it that I perceive myself and I wish others to perceive me to be? And so I think it's really mind for us to be mindful of how it is that we approach encounters in our life, to look at the different pieces. And so it's a bunch of values that come together that synthesize into an action or an inaction,
Mhm.
depending on what it is you're involved in order for you to remain with integrity.
That's really beautiful, and that is so, so true. And I believe this is not only applicable or relevant in the personal life, but in a professional life also. You know, whether it's business or your work or anything. I think what you said, um, I find it, very much lacking right now because
Mhm.
relationships, uh, saying stuff, maybe it could be the truth, but at the wrong time, it can really, really be so detrimental. So thank you so much for addressing this and sharing this with all of us. Um, Also, um, have you ever faced, Alan, a moment where staying true to yourself it required losing something or maybe someone?
Yeah, absolutely. Just look at what we've come through these last, 4 years since 2020, and I don't know what it's like for you, but in North America here, it's
Mhm.
become very divisive. No longer can we speak to each other about politics or health without having to pick a side, so to speak. And if you're on the wrong side, then you tend to be shunned. And so I have found that having conversations today is much more challenging and requires us to really elevate our skill in how we communicate. Because there used to be an opportunity where we could have those conversations and not while we may have offended someone, we could still in the end sit down together and agree to disagree. And then just today we can't, and I find myself in some aspects and some parts of life where that is occurring. And I think that just shows that there's a we're in a place where the level I think it was Einstein who said the only way to solve a problem is to at a higher level of consciousness or something to that effect, and I truly believe that's where we're at today. We're at this precipice of an opportunity to raise the vibration of how we approach challenges that we're faced from a different perspective. And the more open and willing we are to hear and to listen to what people are saying, I think we can come together to a much more powerfully as a society globally as well than we have ever had. And I think this is we were here and we've chosen this life to be at this moment in this time for us to do this kind of work. And I think, for me, that's really important.
Mm, good that you brought up that about consciousness. And then, of course, Einstein, thought and said that people should widen their compassion to, connect or to everyone, including living things and nature as well. Uh,
Mhm.
so, hmm, uh, let's talk about wisdom in this, since we're talking about business. So, many people they confuse wisdom and knowledge. You can get all the knowledge of the entire world or the entire cosmos, but having that wisdom, that it's really a journey of its own. So, you talk about wisdom being learned through reflection, imitation, or experience. So, um, do you think people can truly embody integrity without first going through struggle? I mean, can be taught or self-taught?
I think at a very shallow level, can we? And this is the reason why I say that. When my I had married my high school sweetheart, and I always believed that no matter what would happen in a relationship, that we would be able to make it through, that we could, that we could do this, that, that we would be strong as a couple. Yes, we'd have hard times, but we could make it. And the truth, the reality is that once we were in it, once we were in the darkest days of our marriage, the reality for both of us was that we didn't know how to handle it, and we
Mhm,
made decisions to not do that.
mhm,
Likewise, the second opportunity for me that came up when we're going through some dark days in my current marriage, there was
mhm,
experience there. Experience on my part, but also experience on my wife's part. And so while we knew there was deep emotional wounds that we needed to heal, we
mhm,
also recognized that we could either choose to do this separate or as a couple. And maybe, if we're lucky, we can build something in a marriage, in a relationship that's far stronger. And so we've been able to do that. Does that mean that we don't, that everything is bliss every day in our relationship? Of course it's not.
no,
But what it does mean is that we have different kinds of conversations today. And so
mhm,
I think we definitely can gain wisdom through, reading about some of the things and learning about how other people have handled situations. But
mhm,
until you've given yourself the courage to step into something. Now, I'm not saying, the courage to go and mess up your relationship. I mean the courage to maybe start a business and maybe start in and do a talk. A lot of people struggle, standing in front of a crowd to speak.
yes,
You'll gain wisdom more from doing the act than you will from reading about how to do it. And yes, it is the most bittersweet way to learn is through the experience. But I think it is also becomes the sweetest because there's just too many nuances that you cannot pull out of a book or see on a YouTube video. Even just trying to imitate to the best of your ability how somebody you might admire and how they do things. It's their journey, it's not yours. And so until you're willing to stand in the arena of life and truly experience it, then you will struggle with gaining deep, profound wisdom.
that's such a beautiful answer. Such a beautiful answer. And a very important takeaway. And personally for me as well, and I think for all of our listeners also, Alan. And also, um, I think this is a very interesting question. So, what is one misconception men have about integrity that holds them back from stepping into their full power? I know it's a little bit different from the theme of the show, but I'm
Yeah.
very curious to know about this.
Yeah, say what was the question again?
Yeah. So, what's one common misconception men have about integrity that holds them back from stepping into their full potential or power?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, what I'm seeing is for men is the one thing that they're not doing is they're not willing to step into or and truly be, I'll use the language of being vulnerable.
Mhm,
I talk about walking in your highest masculine self. And in order for to do that, that means if we truly want to live with integrity, then we need to get to the place that we can share deeply what it is that we need in our relationships, whether that's business or personal, how we
mhm,
feel about what's going on around us, not from a feel perspective, of being, a blabbering fool about this. I mean, just being truthful about where it is that you reside in the situation. And I find that the more that men stay guarded
mhm,
and feel that they have this misconception idea of what stoic means.
mhm,
Being stoic doesn't mean you have no emotion. It means that we have the ability to manage our emotions and being able to express them in a more profound way. And so I find that many men struggle with that idea, and so others will see it as vulnerability. I see it as being able to raise the level of our masculine self, that we have the ability to garner from within us the option to speak truth, and at the same time allowing space for that individual or individuals who are hearing that truth to be in a good place. So I think once we start to master that skill, we'll see a big change in our societies as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, as you mentioned, being stoic or being vulnerable, I think there are many nuances here because sometimes vulnerability is often associated with weakness or just showing your emotions, crying or something like that. But I believe when we explore the masculine side, the masculine energy here, it's more about, you have to, you know, gather yourself in times of difficult or toughness, and
Mhm.
there is a certain time when you can be expressive, you can share, but then you should have that wisdom to know or to be aware about.
Agreed, completely agree.
Great, Alan. Also on the flip side, so some argue that integrity is rigid. You either have it or you don't. But others believe integrity is fluid. I mean, it's shifting as we evolve, we mature, we grow. So what's your take on this?
That's an interesting take. That hadn't really considered that. I'll say, and this may sound a little contradictory to what I've been saying so far, but give me an opportunity to explain myself. I think we're always living in integrity. Where we differ in that for ourselves is that when our actions aren't aligning. So I may say that, I value, like I did in my early life, in my 20s, that I valued my family, but my actions showed that I valued career over my family. And so did I live in integrity? I lived in integrity every day because my actions displayed what I valued the most.
Mhm.
When we fall out of integrity is when we go around stating and saying that we do these other things. So I think it is both. It is fluid for sure, because as we gain more wisdom and understanding about, okay, then why am I saying this? And then we can feel that in our bodies. We can feel, like, for me, when there's a decision to be made and it's out of alignment for what I believe, then I'll feel it in the middle of my chest. And so it asks me, and that's one of the things we talk about wisdom is about reflection. So then today now I've trained myself to go and go, okay, so what is going on about this in this moment? And what is the truth around it? And then also around that truth, what part of that story is no longer serving me? And then when that starts to happen, then I think that's when, I can live in even more in integrity. So is it a rigid aspect? I wouldn't say that it's rigid. I'd say that it's constant and it's consistent in our lives. And it is more about the fluidity is more of a depth. It's about truly, going that a little deeper in understanding what's happening for us so that when we are challenged and faced with obstacles, then we can see what we mean by living in total integrity, not just in one aspect in life, but in all areas that we feel that we believe are important to us. And so I hope that answered your question.
Mm, of course, absolutely, absolutely. Great, great. So before we wrap up, Helen, for someone listening right now who feels lost or disconnected from their truth, where should they start?
I I would go back and say I would really look at if you're truly lost, is you need to at least set a waterline, a baseline of where you're at. And we have this tool I mentioned earlier, and it's called the Integrity Challenge. You can find that at members.theawakenedman.net. And what you'll find is in that doing this exercise is you will have a baseline, and you may not be as far out of alignment as you feel. Maybe there are aspects of your life that are, but now you'll have a starting place. Nothing is more challenging than when it's built up into our head and it seems so big, so massive. But if we truly want to conquer that, we have to start by naming it. So we name it to tame it. We
Mhm.
feel it to reveal it, to finally heal it. And this is some of that work you can start to do by looking at a tool like the Integrity Challenge.
Great, great. And of course, if our listeners would like to connect with you, how they can do that.
Yeah, the best way to do is go to theawakenedman.net. I also have a free download the tool they can do there. It's called Setting the Compass. It's an opportunity for you to reflect on what the last 12 months of your life have been like. It's half a dozen or so questions, and then you get to write yourself a newspaper headline, and then I ask you to do the same thing for the next 12 months. And again, it's a little give you a flavor for what we do with the work here at the Awakened Man, and as well as get a sense to get you back on track for your life.
Great. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Alan, thank you so much. This has been such a profound, powerful conversation. I think integrity isn't just a virtue, it is definitely a practice. It's a way of living that really demands courage, self awareness, and maybe sometimes uncomfortable truth. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Son. I really enjoyed having a conversation today.
Yeah, same here, Alan. And to all of our listeners, I hope that you also enjoyed and connected with this conversation. And if this episode has sparked something in you, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life are you fully aligned? And where might you be out of sync with your true values? And also refer to the show notes to connect with Alan and refer to his free giveaway. And also, if this episode has resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to Cosmic Confluence, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep seeking, keep aligning, and keep living with purpose. Thank you.